What is up, podcast listeners? It's Augustine, and I'm here with two amazing guests as we kick off another episode for the Digital Missiology podcast here at ORU. And we've got two ORU grads in the house / on the podcast. We have my good friend, Kevin Trujillo, who married another great friend, Briauna, then Hoyt, now Trujillo, who we were all at ORU together. Guys, we all did it. We were all golden eagles, little eaglets being trained and developed. And now they have launched and they are in Arizona. And so, Kevin, Bree, so thankful that you guys are on the podcast. And thank you for taking time to get out of the Arizona heat and come be on the podcast. How hot is it in Arizona right now?
Well,
Kevin would know.
it was about 101 all day today. Now we're at 97. But fun fact, we're in monsoon season, so pretty much every day, if not every other day, you have this spigot of water that just comes through and flash floods everything for 20 minutes.
Which is the best.
Changes the temperature drastically, but you can't drive anywhere because everything's flooded.
Yeah, that's crazy. Let me ask you this, because Arizona is kind of a spot that I think a lot of people love the idea of, but a lot of people don't live there. What is your favorite thing, both you guys? What is your favorite thing about living in Arizona?
Great question.
The sunsets. The sunsets are stunning, I have to say. They're like 6 shades of pink and orange every night. And typically after a really hot day, there's nothing better than going outside, having a beautiful sunset, and it being cooler. Actually, then come out of your hut.
Yes.
And live outside for a little bit. So that's probably my favorite, is the painted skies.
Come on,
that's
the painted skies.
amazing. My favorite is probably between October and May. That's why I love living here.
Of course.
The weather
Yes.
would just be perfect when your friends are either buried in snow or negative 10 degrees. It's 75.
Yes.
Golf.
Yes.
That's what
It
cares
is
about.
amazing.
Yes. So good. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get out there and visit you guys. I'm Arizona jealous. Not right now in the summer, but I will be in a few months.
We want to give you a good experience that you'll like.
Yes.
And you're thinking that's the time to leave and come here.
Yes. Okay. Well, we've already started talking. I'm gonna get down there. I gotta come visit you guys in the cactus down there in the desert. Kevin, Bree, why don't you guys? Obviously, we have a lot of history amongst the three of us, but maybe give our audience just a little bit of background on kind of your guys' journey at ORU. What did you study? What was your experience like? How did you two meet? And I know you guys, your relationship story is quite intense. So whatever you guys feel like sharing, and how did you guys end up married and in Arizona?
Great question.
Are you wanting me to go?
Yeah, you go first. You're a great storyteller.
So, I came to ORU. I think I was 21 when I came to ORU. I was a transfer student. And I had a dream early on in life to be in business. In high school, my goal was to be a CEO of a company and to go to a private Christian school. And ironically, when I became 18, I didn't get into my dream school that I was wanting to get into. And so that disappointment led me to just take some time off of school and start a nonprofit. And that was a nonprofit that I love dearly, 2 Cents Project, which so many ORU students got to be a part of. But I ran 2 Cents Project, which was so ironic because I was like, in my mind, like, Lord, this is not business. This is ministry. This is serving the Lord. This is, fundraising for every dollar. But it was the most fulfilling thing that I had ever really given myself to. And so it was interesting when I came to ORU, the Lord really started reigniting my heart for business again. I ended up getting a scholarship to come and decided, you know what, like I do want to get my degree. And, God has unlikely timing a little bit later than I was thinking, but I definitely want to get my degree. And so came to ORU and I ended up studying public relations and business. But really in that season, the Lord just started. I was really involved with Enactus, which really was just the integration of, business and social impact. And to me, I think that hit the sweet spot of what I was doing with 2 Cents, but also this longing that I've had my whole life to be in business. And so I got into business, and how we met, we actually met in the prayer room, ironically.
Yes. Come on. All great couples do.
Right?
Yes. So, I guess never say never, because I definitely did not come to ORU to meet a man that I would marry. But Kevin was definitely the best surprise that my life has seen yet today.
Come on.
Probably ever.
Yeah.
But we met in the prayer room. I really wasn't doing any student activity but prayer movement, and was a worship leader. He was a prayer leader, and we were on a set together, and the rest was history.
Yes, it was. It was written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Yes.
Forever, baby.
It was written.
We're locked in forever, and we are thrilled about it.
Yes.
So,
Come on.
I'm super grateful. I got a business degree and a husband out of ORU. So
Let's go. A piece of paper and a ring. That's worth talking about. That's worth celebrating.
Yeah.
Kev, I know your side of the story is a little different, and even kind of where you are now. So maybe give a little context for what did you study, and obviously know how you met. So how did you know to pursue Bree? We'll ask you that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, interesting.
Thanks, Augustine.
Yeah. This is too fun for me.
I went to ORU because my older brother Ryan was attending ORU, so I did the whole college weekend thing. I had no intention to go there, but after visiting college weekend, I was like, this is awesome. I'm from Colorado, so it would be fun to get out of state. And then my brother's already there, so it's kind of an easy on-ramp to at least knowing one person there, right? And then one of my best buddies from high school ended up going there too, so we were roommates for our freshman year. So that helped. But in high school, big sports guy, still a big sports guy, but I was just obsessed with like Mark Cuban and a lot of these other guys. I always butcher their name, but the Kroenke family, who owns the Denver Nuggets and owns the Avalanche and owns the LA Rams, whatever. I've always been fascinated with these like really, really successful, like billionaire entrepreneurs that ended up buying a sports team. So in high school, I was like, gosh, one day I'm going to own a sports team. And I don't care what business takes me there, but I want to own a sports team. So that said, when I went to ORU, I actually studied accounting to start. And I just loved numbers, and business made sense. So after first semester, I was like, or not even first semester, first quarter of first semester, I switched over to marketing because I realized I am very, very outgoing and I love the creative side. So I figured marketing would be a better suit for me. And then close to Christmas time, one of the chapel services, whether it may have been Fall Revival, one of them just absolutely blasted me in the best way. And I just got rocked, pretty much just reconnected my life back to Jesus and was like, you know what? I'm going to all in, follow, do as he says and commands. And at that point, I didn't know which direction I was going to go because I didn't know if business was suited for me at that point. And the only thing I could think to myself was, I just want to know Jesus better. And so what better way than to study the Bible under teachers that spend their life learning specific topics. So that said, prayed about it and switched over to theology. And so my undergrad degree is biblical literature. So I actually had no plans, no intentions on being in vocational ministry. But that said, I just wanted to know Jesus better, and I was afforded the opportunity through all of those amazing classes and the amazing professors that taught, and I still remember a lot of their teachings to today. But in the middle of that, when I met Bree, I was floored because not only did I think she was extremely beautiful, but loved her heart for the poor, and it opened up my world view to engaging, in the streets with either homeless or women's shelters, underprivileged kids, whatever it was, from meeting her to doing ORU missions. and prayer movement, really. It just was a steamroller. So I really enjoyed that. But when Bree and I had started hanging out, it was coffees downtown, then it was, coffees at Hava Java or wherever else we'd grab coffee. Every student can relate. We just found some coffee shop and camped out and did homework, but we really didn't do homework because we just talked the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And that said, about 9 months in to us just being friends and doing coffees and group hangouts and whatever, actually I talked with Augustine and a couple other friends, and I was like, man, I really think I should try and take the next step and ask Bree, if I can pursue her. And so I made the effort to, pursue her. And I just had a very candid convo with her saying I liked her. I would love to pursue her if she was cool with it. But I left it open-handed, like no pressure. I'll still be your friend. Like, you don't have to feel worried. We'll still be friends afterwards. But I do have intention to pursue you.
Yeah. You're feeling hot.
I know. It was. But that said, long story short, we ended up
really that conversation
started dating.
That actually, my interpretation of that conversation was hammer time.
Yeah.
And he laid the law down and was like, hey, I'm not going to give you free coffee dates anymore. You kind of need to know if you like me. If you don't, hey, I'll talk to you for 2 weeks. And the story goes, everyone always says, what did you say? And I said, oh, my eyes just started bursting with tears. I said nothing for like 3 hours.
Oh. We might have to have y'all.
Augustine helped him craft words.
For sure.
And
yeah, I gave him some phrases. Yeah,
some phrases.
Yeah,
and gave me the push that I needed, and here we are.
Yeah, it was my encouragement to especially the young guys at OU. I was so impacted through Augustine and just like wanting to be like a man of God, a man with initiative, a man that pursued. Like, it's our responsibility to pursue the woman and to be intentional and to put ourselves out there, even if it feels vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was so grateful that I had done that, because Bree had honestly some experience where guys were like wishy-washy, didn't know what they wanted. Maybe they had a coffee, then they'd go whatever. But if you have an intention and you have a plan and you communicate it, even if they reject you, it's okay. Like, you have to be the initiator, the risk taker, the pursuer. And we talk a lot about that.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. We're going to have you guys on for another episode where we just talk about dating, relationships, marriage. That's an hour-long podcast episode with y'all. That's a good one. You got some good. These guys, man, I'm telling you, they did it right. You guys did it so well, and I love being a part of your relationship from the beginning. I love being there from the beginning, all the way through till now. And man, God is good. He got you guys, and you got the rings. So hey,
that's right.
We love it.
You're in our wedding pictures forever, so you always get a credit.
Yep, I was there, and I'm a stand on that. It's good, especially from that first coffee date. I remember that. So what I love about your guys' stories, even at ORU, and I'd love to shift to part 2 of that, of what was after ORU, but to see that theme of heart for ministry, love for Jesus, love for the outcast and the poor, love for seeing what God is doing, but also having a heart and a passion for business and being fascinated with CEOs and business models and having this outlook on life of like, this is what I want to do, but it's very businessy, but I've also got this heart for ministry. And so this is a theme that I think we'll keep coming back to on the episode. But tell us a little bit about now. Okay, you've graduated, you're on the other side of graduation. Bree, you did some more further studies, which I think was super cool. Would you tell us a little bit about your studies after ORU?
Yeah, so the plan just kind of continued. I jumped into business shortly after graduating ORU, and was still doing, 2 cents on the side. But really was kind of starting to think, got to pay for life, got to kind of figure out a plan post graduation, and ended up. I always wanted to go to a top tier kind of Ivy League school, and actually. Dr. Wilson and several faculty at ORU actually wrote my reference letters to get into the London School of Economics, which is a globally recognized business school. A lot of thought leaders have gone there and political leaders. And interestingly, I kind of knew that that door was for me when I looked on the website. I had a friend that told me about the program. She'd graduated there and just said, I really think that you have what it takes to get into this program. And the program that was launching that fall was actually social entrepreneurship and business. And there's this marriage between really, social impact and business and kind of all of the outcomes that come from those two, sectors merging together. And so miraculously, it was a very, it was kind of, I think I thought I got a 2% chance to get in. Got in. And so, got to do an executive master's program and, finished top of my class and just learned so much. There's something about studying abroad and just really opening up your eyes to the world outside of America and the way that different people think and live and think, and lead their lives that just adds to the education that you're getting at the actual university. But that was just one of those. There's a verse that talks about a desire fulfilled is a tree of life. And that experience for me was truly the Lord just giving me a wink and saying, I see you. I know that this was hidden in your heart and I've seen your trust throughout the years. I've definitely very imperfectly trusted the Lord, but my heart has always been, I grew up in a Messianic Jewish church, actually, and so I learned a lot of Hebrew, didn't really know what to do with it, but one of the words that I learned early on in life was Hineni, which actually means, here I am, Lord, send me. And I think that's always been the cry of my heart was, even with ORU, I didn't experience ORU until I really interviewed for the whole person, and it was kind of one and done for me. Really didn't apply to any other grad programs, just went with LSE. But I feel like you learn as a Christian leader, the more that you practice listening to the Lord, I find that his voice becomes more in tune, and you're never going to get it perfectly right. But there was just so many clear doors that I knew the Lord was saying, doesn't need to make sense, doesn't need to be the perfect timing, doesn't need to be your timing, doesn't need to be your plan. But I am opening this door, and if you have the courage to walk through it, I want you to, in this way, to do X, Y, Z things. So that was a really pivotal time in my life because I would say I lived a relatively sheltered life. Most of my life grew up in a Christian family, and then went to ORU, which is next to heaven, in my opinion. I love it so much.
We are big fans.
Big fans.
Yes.
So going to LSE was the complete opposite. A very liberal, global thought leading school, very progressive, very politically diverse. And so just getting to sit and listen to so many people that had experiences that were so different than mine, had theologies, had religions, had beliefs, had lifestyles that had nothing in common with me. There was one other believer who was in the course, and we would text each other every other week and be like, how are you holding up? Because it was just there was a lot going on. In a very strong way. And so, but I loved it. I felt like I was in the center of my purpose, and I felt like that was a really pivotal moment where I was like, I'm not born to just be around people that look like me and talk like me. I believe that for my specific journey and for what the Lord's called Kevin and I to, we really feel like God's called us to be a city on a hill and to really be the salt in the midst of a lot of dark. So
I love that. I think that's a really cool thing for young people to hear as they're listening to your story. And Kev, feel free to chime in on this thought too. But I think a lot of people look at their degrees and they kind of make a path for themselves based on the degree they choose. And so what's interesting about even both of you guys' paths is, okay, Brie, you have your degree, you have the PR degree in undergrad, and then you're over here at London School of Economics. And then Kev, you're over here with your English Bible degree over here, and now you're over here, you're in real estate. And so really your degrees have not dictated your careers at all. Why don't you guys just speak into that a little bit about kind of reframing that mindset and helping young people that are studying something right now look at their life, their career, their ministry, what's on their hearts in a bigger perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I'll jump in. So for me, when I was soon to be graduating, I took a 1-year contract with evangelist Reinhard Bonnke's ministry, Christ Christ for All Nations. I've seen there's so many CF and CFTN. Our church is CFTN, it's CFAN.
So the
Sorry,
different one. Yeah.
So that said, we did big gospel crusades, which Reinhard Bonnke's ministries led over 75, probably close to 80 million people to Christ now in 40 years. And so it was these big events that were just like 10,000 to a million people, just depending on where you were in the world.
Yep.
And it was an incredible experience. My heart had always been, I just want people to be introduced to the Jesus that I've met, and not just the religion or whatever. Is like the Jesus that I follow is transformative. It will change your worldview. He will be your anchor, your peace, all these things in the midst of a crazy world, right?
Yeah.
And so working for that ministry was awesome because you got to see it in like big masses. And so I was used to this big, we got to rally the city. We got to see revival in the country. We got to just like do the biggest thing we can, which is good to have that heart posture and that zeal and that energy. But toward the latter part of it, when I was reading one of the Gospels, our heart had always been like hardest and darkest, whether it was like, it could be Middle East, it could be Africa, it could be Europe, it could be business, it could be anything. It was like God put us in spheres that are hard to reach, that the gospel's not seen. As the Lord spoke to Oral Roberts, that his voice is not yet heard, his light is seen dim. We want to be in those places because, it's like we want to be there. Like that's where the need is, right? So as I was reading the story of the rich young ruler, when he came to Jesus and said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus said, well, sell everything you have, give it all to the poor, and follow me. And he had sorrow in his heart and face. Jesus turned to the disciples and said, it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom than for a camel to go through an eye of a needle. And I thought to myself, that is not a statistic. It's not just Joshua Project saying 0.2% unreached. Like, this is Jesus who we follow saying it's harder for quote unquote the rich man. I'm putting quotes around it because that doesn't mean just like money, but like the person that doesn't need him, it's harder for them to enter the kingdom, right? So for us, and for me, it hit me like a ton of bricks where I was like, Jesus gave every single believer the same call, which was go therefore into all the world and make disciples of all nations. So whether a nurse, whether commercial real estate, whether medical sales, whether pastor, whether school teacher, you are all called, we are all called to be making disciples and to be following the ways of Jesus in a way that causes people to want to know more about him. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new kingdom. And so at that point, I felt this very strong call of like, wait, maybe I'm not called into ministry. And I'm actually called to the business space because it's outside of the walls of the church. And though we support, are part of Love the Local Church, people in my business will maybe never come to church. And that, like, and you have to be okay with that thought because, we need to disciple them. But ultimately, God has positioned us in places where we can be his light through excellence, really being really, really good at your craft. Because there's a verse that says in Proverbs, do you see the man who is excellent in his ways? He will be placed before kings and not before unknown men. So if you are excellent in your craft, favor will automatically, God will have favor on you no matter what. But if you then are excellent and really, really good at accounting, or really, really good at sales, or really, really good at being an executive leader, or really, really good teacher, like God's favor is already there, but then your excellence will also open doors that no man can do. And you want to be in that position of influence so that you can teach people the principles of Jesus, which are slow to anger, being loving, being kind, being patient. And it's like you now have a mirror of the fruits of the Holy Spirit that you can look at and be like, am I operating in these in my workplace? Because this actually draws people to him, right? It draws when the economy crashes and you have peace. People are curious, people are hungry, or when someone's family member dies and you're there in the thick of it with them, So the big thing for me from transitioning from working for vocational ministry and especially going from ORU missions and transitioning into the business world, it went from, oh, what if it's actually about 1 to 2 and not 2 million?
Right.
And how do I love the person in front of me really, really well?
Yeah.
And how do I be very, very intentional? And what if my call in life now is just this one business owner, and he's my one assignment, he or she's my one assignment, and my reward will be just as good as if I was Billy Graham. And it's like God actually sees the small things as big as the big things. There's no hierarchy or low or whatever. It's like if God has put you in that position, you are called to be light and salt, like Bree was saying, and to also be excellent to where you can influence. Because if you look at the book of Daniel, God positioned Daniel strategically to influence Nebuchadnezzar. And then once he influenced Nebuchadnezzar, he left. Now Cyrus comes in. He still gets to influence the king, which impacts the whole nation.
Right.
And so it's not just the one person. Like, you don't know who is on the other side of that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I could keep going, but
No, that's good. And I just say, like, you know, we heard it from being in ORU mission so much, being under the great Bobby Parks, like hearing it, hey, the measure of success in the kingdom, it's obedience. You know, it's not about how many you get across the finish. Like it's saying, is it the one? And if it's the one homeless person on the street that you spend hours talking to, great. That's your assignment. That's where you're being obedient. If it is the CEO, if it is your congregation, if it is the person in your hospital suite that you're taking care of as a nurse, like, hey, this is like your assignment. This is what obedience looks like. So I love that you're echoing that. So I guess let me ask you guys this question. If the measure of success really is obedience for people that want to go into business, what is your missiology about going into the business world? Like, how would you guys, what would you give young people as a kind of a framework of, okay, this is my mission. This is how I go on mission while still being excellent and pursuing the things of business?
So good. Such a good question.
Yeah,
I don't have it. It's a great question that makes me think like it would be a good thing to spend time kind of fleshing it out, like an actual kind of mission. But I think that the thing that kind of comes to mind is yesterday I attended a funeral of a business leader that was very well known in my parents' town and a dear friend to my parents, and a man of faith, and you know, relatively, like, he was kind of a jack of all trades. He was actually in dairy farming and like he had big contracts with Land O'Lakes and like you know, was very successful. But it's interesting because amongst the community, like, he just enjoyed building relationship with people, having conversations. And so during one of the eulogies, his best friend was saying how no one knew really what this leader was doing with his time and money. And the leader of the service actually stood up and said, you know, what I know this man by is actually his generosity towards the church. And many of you don't know, but this building exists because of him. And you don't know that, you know, the community center outside, which is the largest community center in the city, was actually given to us privately from him. And like, here he's being recognized at his funeral. And it was the first funeral that I've gone to where I felt more, it was obviously sad, but there was a lot of joy in really reflecting on his life. It was a completely packed room, and really thinking that, like, you know, if we were measuring this man's success by what we knew he was up to, by what we saw he was doing, by the impact we were impacted by, right? We would maybe make an assessment one way or the other. But it was such an eternal moment to realize that, like, what are we living for, really?
Come on.
You know, like, who are we really living to please? And like Kevin said, like, if Jesus calls you to serve 2 people, are you okay with that? More than that, like, do you trust him? And so I think that, like, I left and I was like, I don't really care to ever be known. Like, I really, truly don't care to explain what I'm doing to someone all the time. Because
Yeah.
business is all about performance. So there's a side of it where you do have to really show up and own what you're doing and own what you're working on. But spiritually, God sees those things. I don't need to vindicate and prove myself to my community or to, and I think that like what I would say for this phase in the journey, because I don't think that we have this all figured out, I would say yes to Jesus.
That's so good.
I would say that if he calls you to go sit with the poor when your one desire was not to do ministry, say yes. If he sends you to college 4 years late and humbles you and you're like, I could have done this and been graduated by 18, like my brother, here I am, older than everyone, going to school, say yes.
Yeah.
And if he gives me a job that I'm like, okay, like I remember my first job out of ORU. Okay, this is actually kind of funny that I'm remembering this. Okay, like if you've graduated college, you're going to appreciate what I'm about to tell you. ORU is so good at making you feel like you really are the answer to the world's problems. And I love that. I think there's a powerful thing in being sent and being believed in.
Yep.
But sometimes right after graduation, you hit a little dip and you're kind of like, I just went from, from being the all-star on the senior team to being so anyway, I felt like the Lord told me to work at the church across the street's bookstore right out of college. I mean, we'll just say minimum wage was what I was making there.
Yes.
Using my degree. And I remember, like, I actually was challenged by quite a few people that cared about me, like, what are you doing? But for me, it was like, I look back and I'm like, whether it was right or wrong, I was truly doing that out of like, I felt like the Lord was saying, like, I want you to slow your pace down and I want you to like serve the church.
Yeah.
And so I said yes. And so I guess don't try to come up with your own plans to change business. Just submit to God's plan. If you trust that his plans for your life are good and you have these desires that have been hidden in your heart for years, like for me, it's like always wanted to be in business. And I have found myself in a company now with, it's a very liberal company, very, very, very liberal, a tech company that I love very much. And a lot of my colleagues are nothing like me. But my actual manager in our sales org, she started this group called, it's basically a group on our Slack, which is a technology we use to communicate.
Yes. Slack
we gather every other week and we literally pray. And it's been this really interesting picture of the kingdom existing amongst dark culture, because we're all kind of like, how in the world did we get this approved?
Wow.
And we're seeing, last week we had a Orthodox Jew that joined, and he was just like, I just am so grateful that I can share my faith, and the majority of us are Christian, but we love that he joined and that he's listening and he's asking us questions and he's asking us how we pray at the end of every day. And it's like, would I have foreseen that when I said yes to this job when we moved out to Arizona? No. But I knew that the Lord was saying, this is the next assignment I have for you. And so for me, it's more about simple obedience and then like actively asking the Lord each day, like, who's on your mind today?
Yeah.
Like, who do you have? And sometimes it's an executive and sometimes it's a sales manager and other times it's just my colleague. You know? But I think that like, I think everything's seasonal. I'm in a season of just simple obedience with what's in front of me. It's really nothing more than what I'm sharing. Like, and I think saying yes to those opportunities, asking God who's on your heart, and really trusting when it doesn't make any sense has kind of been my unconventional theme with business.
No, I think that's 100% missional. And it's that mentality, right? Like it's that mentality of looking at those small things and looking at obedience and hearing God's voice in those little moments and asking him, who do you want me to talk to? Who's the person I should be praying for in my company, my business, in the cubicle next to me? Like it's that kind of conversations with the Holy Spirit that may not be the 10,000 person crusade prayer, but it's the person in the cubicle next to me, and that's just as valuable and just as important. So let me ask you guys this from your experience in real estate sales and being around the business world, right? So if you're going to talk to a young person studying business who has a heart for business, wants to be a CEO someday, what's a piece of advice you would pass on to a young business person if they're listening to you guys? Not that you have it all figured out or you're perfect, but just a lesson that you've learned that you're like, if you could learn this now, it'll help you when you get into your business career. What would that lesson be?
That's a great question. My first inclination is I just want to affirm anyone listening that does not feel a specific call to vocational ministry. If you do, amazing too. But if you do not, like, I just want to give you permission that God is equally going to be with you, that you will have equally as much purpose, as much value. You shouldn't feel any guilt. You shouldn't feel any shame. Like, I have mentors in my life that are strong, Jesus-loving, believing, Bible-believing, the whole 9 yards. And they tell me all the time, like, we want you to make a ton of money so that you can be extremely impactful, extremely influential, and that God can really use your skills, your money, your time, your wisdom eventually, like everything for his good and his kingdom.
Come on.
And so I just, before I give my piece of advice, like I just want to affirm you, if you feel this call, like God has put that on you for a reason.
Yeah.
And some are missionaries to South America. Others are missionaries to healthcare. Others are missionaries to commercial real estate. Others are missionaries to government and politics. And you don't have to feel guilty or ashamed of that, because like Jesus overly emphasized that the small things are just as important as the big things, and the big things is the small things when it comes to obedience. And so I just love to get the opportunity to affirm that, because I have received that affirmation from a few business leaders in my life. And it's been revolutionary for me, to where I can feel fully on purpose and in my calling. But my piece of advice to any young, business person, I now work in an incredible organization here in Phoenix, Scottsdale, doing commercial real estate, where we help a lot of tenants locate space or work with big landlords or whatever. But one thing I would overly emphasize, and it's very simple, is two big things that Jesus talked about was, number one, the kingdom, and number two, the art of following, really. And Jesus said over and over, follow me, to all of these different people, right? Go and sin no more, but follow me, lay down your nets, follow me. And if I could give advice to a younger business person, is follow Jesus. You don't follow money. You don't follow a specific career. You follow Jesus and trust that he is the good shepherd and will lead you exactly where he wants you to be. If he wants you to have a ton of money, he'll give you a ton of money. If he wants you to do this, he'll do this for you, right? Like, he knows your path better than you do. And so my advice is commit to the first commandment wholeheartedly, which is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And Jesus said, if you seek first the kingdom, all of these things will be added to you. Every desire that we just talked about, it will be fulfilled in perfect timing. And Jesus will lead you in a very, very strategic and amazing direction. And you will be so shocked. I mean, we couldn't have imagined we would be at this point if you were to tell us this when we were juniors in college. Like, you have no idea how he leads and where he leads, but it's going to be incredibly good. He will be with you through the ups and downs. And when it comes to being in the business space, I'll offer a piece of practical wisdom. I actually heard this recently, which really impacted me, is when following the ways of Jesus, you want to be a representation of him to whoever you meet. But in loving people and figuring out, how do I position myself to maybe one day, we can have the conversation about who I follow. And the conversation that I was advised was
spoken like a true evangelist.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe one day.
Come on. You Bible major, you.
Yeah, totally.
That is so his heart. That was really cute.
But
maybe one day.
But I was told this recently, which really has sat with me, is you have to earn the right to be bold. So in every relationship, and especially relationships that you're building at work, you have to earn the right to be bold. So that said, you don't talk about yourself all the time. You ask questions. You get to know people. You genuinely care about people, where they are, where they're going. And through the past 5 years of being in the business world, I've walked with coworkers through deaths. Some people have walked through really hard things. And I've just been a very, very steady, I'm here for you if you need anything. I want you to know if we believe in Jesus, we're praying for you. I don't care what you believe in, but like, we are here with you. And it's opened up some awesome doors of conversation.
Wow.
But it is a long play. You have to earn the right to be bold. You don't just get to come out the gate and just slam it down their throat. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
For sure.
Also, if I can add something that he was saying that was interesting. I was remembering that season when he was at his last company, and here he had transitioned from ministry into business. And honestly, in a lot of ways, Kevin was really pioneering. I think he's being humble, but I think a lot of people that loved him really had him set up for ministry and were offering him jobs in different ministries, and he really had to say no to that because he felt like the Lord was pulling him in a different direction. And it's kind of like 51% faith, right? Like you're mostly sure that this is the right path. But when he was in that job, it was technology consulting. He would tell me about these conversations that he's having, and I'm like, this is like more in depth, like real raw baggage that people are dumping on you in your cubicle than a pastor gets, after church on Sunday. And it just shows that like God is so much bigger than our understanding, and his ways are so much more creative and more strategic. Like God is actually very strategic. Good. And so we have our finite understanding from the teaching we get that if you're a theology major, you're going to be set up to be a pastor of one of these churches. But God had business leaders in mind when he was leading Kevin to do those moves. And it's like, I feel like it's been such a joy as his wife to watch his colleagues get to know him, because I'm like, he is the most relational, he is the most pastoral, he is the most shepherding, like he's going to care the most. Like he's just such a treasure for people to happen upon in the business world that like, I think what he did really well was, if you feel a leading towards something that doesn't feel as conventional for you, for your family, for your peers, for, even mentors in some cases, you really have to lean into the uncomfortable. Like, don't ignore it. Don't be like writing it off because it's not the path that's been paved with 6 layers of pavement. Like, really get in the quiet place and ask the Lord, like, are you calling me to go there? And there might be a path or not, but Jesus didn't say, like, come to me if it's safe and comfortable and I'll make you well. He said, follow me, like Kevin said. So it's like, I think mentors were a really part of him really finding his way into business. I think, I think books that he read, I think, knocking on doors and being like, Lord, are you going to open a door in business? If this is what you're leading me to do, you have to make the provision. Right. Interestingly, I remember 2 of the mentors that came into his life both had a theology major, and both were funding the kingdom of God with their businesses. And so it was like, it may not be a lot, but God will provide. It may not be that the majority are with you, but there will be people with you. Yes. And I just look at those people and look at now, it's like, once you do the weed whacking, then you're like in the breakthrough, right? You're in your groove, the favor's going, you found your assignment, you've got your skill set, you know what's on your resume, you know what you're good at. Those first few years, it was really a journey of faith, watching him really believe, even though there wasn't a lot of like outcomes. And now it's becoming this thing that he can really teach on, and he's given because of his obedience. So just walk in that obedience, even if it's hard.
I love that. I think that's so practical, and I think encouraging and inspiring for young people. And I can echo, man, you do degrees and you think you have your plan lined up and you know your career and what it's going to look like. You have your 10-year goals. And then you're like, if you're truly obedient to Jesus, I know very few people that hit their 10-year goals, if I'm being honest, because the 10-year goal may be a good goal, but you may actually accomplish it in 2, or you may accomplish it in 30. And it's really not your timeline. I don't know why we create timelines in the kingdom of God. I don't either. All right. So, man, we've hit so many great things, but I kind of want to land the plane with just one more kind of area that I think you guys do really well. And I think young people just really need to learn. And what's funny is in the last 2 episodes, I've talked with guys that have done this well as well, and it's just amazing to see the favor of God on people who invest in mentor relationships. And so I'm really passionate about making sure that young people know, first of all, that it's not too scary, that you can do it, but two, that it also isn't too complex. It doesn't have to be this super complex. I think we overcomplicate it a lot of times. We make it like, if I ask this person out to coffee, they're my mentor for life. And it's like dating at ORU, right? It's like, if I ask this girl out to one coffee, I'm basically proposing to her. So I need to make sure before I ask her for one coffee that she's my bride. You know what I mean? Like, it's way over proportion. So, from my perspective and me watching you guys and being a fan of you guys, loving you guys, you've just honored authority. You've honored people that are older, wiser, more experienced by wanting to be invested into and taking them to coffee or going to lunches or DMing them on LinkedIn or on Instagram and saying like, hey, I just want to like have 30 minutes of your time. I mean, like you guys actually do it. So I guess give a word of advice, especially for young people who have a heart for business and leadership. How do you go about going after that business leader that you want to learn from, or that amazing guy who is giving money to the kingdom, like, but maybe you don't have a relationship with them, or you're intimidated to reach out? Like, what are some practical pieces of advice that you can pass on to other young leaders?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, you go first, and then I'll go.
I would make mine very, very salesy and very quick. My one tip would be grit, and that is, when you are really deciding that you want a mentor, why do you want a mentor? Are you choosing a mentor because you feel like you're lacking something and you feel like they can really add value in that area, or are you choosing a mentor because your friends are choosing mentors and it's the next thing to do? And why? So first, like, why are you trying to ask for somebody's time? Once you identify that, be very persistent. Be very persistent, and if the door shuts, go to the next door. Timing's not right, revisit in 2 weeks. And the biggest thing I would say is, like, it's on you as a young person. Like, don't get offended, don't get rejected, don't get orphan spirit, don't get down and out and no one likes you and they don't have time for you. No. It's like in sales, which I love. If you're going to ask a physician, which I work with, for 40 minutes of their time, you better know what you want. You better have it ready. So, like, not that it's that pensive, because most of our mentors are some of our close friends, and they are the warmest, most endearing relationships. But initially, when you're first kind of like making an ask of somebody, you get 30 minutes of somebody's time, which even someone 10 years older than you, their schedule is so much different than 10 years ago, right? We were just saying that. Like, so I would just say, like, be gritty and don't back down if you get a no, or if you know, it's like finding a counselor. Like, just because you tried one counselor and it didn't work doesn't mean counseling's not for you. So it's like, Kevin, sell the house, or what is it? Sell the house, buy the field.
Yeah, totally.
I get verses mixed up all the time, which is why I actually like fish hooked him into being a theology lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
The references, I always get things messed up, but go check.
Bible guy.
So, like, sell the house, buy the field thing. Like, know what's worth it to you. Like, Bobby Parks, what is truly worth it to you? And if really getting 30 minutes of someone's time because they're in business and they're funding the kingdom is important to you, then don't quit. Be the widow that keeps knocking until you get the meeting. And I'm not saying, like, blow the same person up. Don't hear what I'm not saying.
Right.
Use some social awareness. But I'm just saying, like, I know it's, like, I've heard from so many young people that have asked us that, and it's like, it's just so, they don't want to spend time, it's usually me, and it's like, think about them. Why don't you buy their coffee? Why don't you go with a local store that you're going to gift them with? Thank you so much. I know that you are so busy. After that, then you just start reciprocal relationship, building that bond, and then you get a friend that literally just cherishes you and is honored that they get to spend time with you. But that initial ask, I would just say grit would be my answer.
Yeah, and I would add on to everything she said, because that is a lot of what I would have said as well. It is so important for us as younger people to recognize our humanity, our depravity. We don't know everything. We don't know how to be the best fill in the blank, the best husband, the best student, the best business person, the best ministry person. We don't have all the answers. And it is so important, I think, that, for us both, and I've just made it a goal in my own heart of like, the moment I'm not curious and not hungry for more expertise and wisdom, like I'm nervous because I don't know everything. I don't know how to do everything the best. And they can fast track you. They, as in mentors, can fast track you in so many other areas and also help you get ahead in life. Even through like their friendships and connections, which you don't do anything, to get somewhere. You only do it to gain wisdom and knowledge, insight, and you have, actually, I think I saw something about what Troy said last time was so spot on, like have questions ready to go, have an idea of what you want to talk about, because people that are in a mentoring, which we should all be mentoring, but like usually if you're reaching to a 50, 60 plus year old, they have families, they have kids, grandkids, businesses, ministries, like they have a lot on their plate, but they love to spend time with us and to teach us. And it is 100%, as Bree said, on you, on us, to be the ones initiating. Even a practical tip at your very first coffee, you just say, I've said this a handful of times, like, I so respect and admire the way you do X, you do this, you do this. I'm a young businessman, hungry to learn, and I just have a few questions for you.
Yes.
I don't want anything from you. I don't need anything more from you than I just want wisdom.
Yep.
And I have said that exact sentiment a handful of times.
Yep.
And there have been 2 to 3 business guys that have said, no one has ever said that to me. They only reach out to me because they need something from me.
Yep.
And so you just come in with as much humility as possible, and you don't say at the end of the conversation or coffee, will you be my mentor? Or
will you marry me?
Will you marry me first date? You then, after that coffee, should be like, I'd love to do this again. I'll be sure to reach out in a month or 2 months if you're comfortable with that.
Yes.
And then they give you what they're comfortable with. And then you just, there are some mentors I have in my life, I have to schedule a meeting with them 2 months in advance.
Yes.
And that's not because they're not prioritizing me. They don't want to spend time with me. They're that busy. And you have to be respectful of their timing. But you also got to be persistent to get in front of them. But I can say for us, having mentors in our life has been one of the most invaluable gifts that we've had. And if you don't have a mentor, I was actually with this group of guys the other day, and this guy literally, it was aggressive, but I appreciated it. He said, if you don't have a mentor in your life, that's your fault. Like, there's no reason you shouldn't have at least one mentor in your life that is you can go to, you can bounce, that is not your parents.
Yes.
We love our parents. You should honor and love them and ask them for wisdom too. But you need to have an outside voice that can give you balanced perspective.
Absolutely.
I echo everything Bree said.
Yeah.
She did that well.
And I think, I mean, you guys just have done it so well, and I really respect that. And I just think it's important for young people to know it's really not that hard, especially in the world of virtual. We can reach out to anyone at any time, DMs, and we can find an email, and we can shoot them a message on LinkedIn. Like, it's so easy in comparison to 10, 15 years ago, where it's like, man, you did have to figure out, okay, how do I get to that person? Now you can get to people so easily. So, I think it's important that young people do that, and you guys have done that so well. So, kind of as we close, I want to just give you an opportunity, and Kevin, you kind of already went there a little bit with just kind of any short affirmation that you may have for a young person that wants to go into business, where it may feel even they come from a background or a context where it's like, oh, it's like secondary to being a pastor, or it's not as holy as being a missionary, like in the constructs of our mind, kind of what we say, we never say it, but we think it maybe sometimes. What would be kind of your closing affirmations for our young leaders in business?
That's pretty good.
Sure. I would just say you're not the only one, and the life of a pioneer is a beautiful life, and it's one of those where God is so with you, He's so for you, and it's truly just a life of faith. And I know for us, like one of the big influences was the Green family, which if you go to ORU, you've heard of the Greens, look into their story of really the obedience that he took with his own family, that they all loved him and meant well, but he just faced so much opposition with his family on, why are you not in ministry? Why are you doing business? But he knew the Lord's still small voice, and he knew he didn't have the plan. He couldn't write the business plan out, but he knew there was an inkling of God leading him to do this, and it was his simple obedience that led him to start Hobby Lobby. And, you know, they're funding the kingdom. 70%, 80% of their revenue is really building the kingdom of God. Nobody could have imagined that. You know, we really just feel like he was one of the true pioneers, and we're kind of just like following behind him. The wind speed is passing over us and making it easier for us, because there's so many people along the journey that you'll meet that you'll just be like, me too. And it just makes your relationships deeper and richer. So it's just one of those things where trust the Lord and know that he'll bring provision as you go. It may not be immediate. It might be kind of hard at first. You might end up at a bookstore making, you know, $10 an hour, but like that simple obedience will continue to like open doors, and it's such an amazing ride. Like it has been so fun.
That is spot on. I would say probably the same exact thing. And like the affirmation I said earlier, like, you do not have to feel guilty or secondhand. And even if you grew up, like one of my closest mentors was a theology major that switched to business. Now he's an incredible businessman, but he felt second fiddle when he started doing business, because the pastors in his church were like, well, you're not really doing much then, because you're not, you know, going overseas or doing a bunch, which we should all be somewhat doing. But in the same breath, breaking free from that and knowing that God is behind you, he's for you, he's with you. And if you feel, like Bree is saying, that prompting of the Holy Spirit on the inside of you to go a specific direction, into a specific business or a specific open door that is there, like, do it, and do it with all your might. I remember thinking, you know, when we lived in Tulsa, now that we live here in Scottsdale, like, wherever you are, my like affirmation encouragement, wherever you are, be all in. Don't be half foot in, half foot out. Don't be, oh, well, my heart's in Texas, but I live in Arizona now, or my heart's in Colorado, but I live in Arizona. Like, be all in. Be all in, you know, Scottsdale. Invest in friends, invest in community. And my prayer for you is the prayer that we have prayed over the past 2 years, is that God would bring you a Peter, James, and John, where you can do life with a few, and you can do it really well, and you just be surprised at what God can do through just a few that do life together.
Wow. That's amazing. That's beautiful. And I think, man, I really just hope people are listening to what you guys have to share, because obviously you guys are my friends, and I love it, and I've known your story and gotten to see you guys along this journey. But I just hope that young people that are listening just take time for the Lord to expand their horizons, expand kind of what they've thought a lot for themselves, and even for a lot of, you know, people that have a heart for business. Like, it's a good thing. It's a gift. Like, God has created you and designed you the way that you are for a specific purpose. And so even if you get a Bible degree, you end up doing things that, man, God is blowing your mind. And that's part of the adventure, right? That's part of the fun, is not knowing what's around that next turn and getting to enjoy the process. So, man, I'm so thankful for you guys being on here. Thank you for taking the time to invest in these young people, raising up future Golden Eagles. Come on, somebody.
Yes. We love you. And know the ORU community, please reach out to us. We love
Seriously,
all of you.
We love it.
Yes.
We answer any questions you have. It's so near and dear to our heart, Augustine, and you picked the perfect topic. You just know so well.
Hey, I'm just here to be a bridge to help people find other cool people like you. So if you're in Arizona, you need to hit them up. And if you're not, find them on LinkedIn or something.
And the students are so lucky to have people like Augustine and Allie on campus.
100%.
For real.
Yeah.
Oh, well, look at our time. It's run out.
Exactly right. That's not over, that's for sure.
No, thank you guys again for being on here. And thank you, everyone that's listening to the podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're taking notes, and I hope you're getting a lot out of it. So we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks,
Bye,
Augustine.
guys.